The White House has been thinking hard about AI lately, and a new story my colleagues Sylvia Varnham and Aaron Holmes published yesterday reveals new details about an executive order the administration is working on. And I want to bring them on both to tell us more about what they've found. Sylvia and Aaron, welcome back to the show. It's great to have you here.
Hey,
Thank
Akash,
you.
great to be here.
All right, so let's talk about the White House. Sylvia, what did you find in your reporting?
Yeah, so yesterday we obtained a copy of a draft executive order that, as you said, the White House is working on. And it's effectively trying to prevent states from regulating AI. Now, this order, which is still in draft phase, directs the Attorney General to create a litigation task force to sue states who enact AI laws that the administration is unhappy about. It also instructs the Commerce Department to withhold federal funding to certain states as well over this issue of AI regulation. So it's a really interesting document, obviously raises a lot of questions as well.
Okay. And Aaron, if you think about what a regular or an executive order like this, what impact it would have on Silicon Valley and on companies, what stands out to you?
Yeah, I mean, this is essentially something that a lot of tech companies have been asking for from the White House for a long time. We saw Mark Andreessen essentially come out this week in favor of such an action to block states from regulating AI. And we've also heard that Meta, Google, and OpenAI have been asking for, similar action. The basic reason for that is that, these state regulations make it more onerous and costly to comply with as they build AI models, and those companies don't want to have to deal with a patchwork of regulations across different states. So they're essentially, using their lobbying with the White House to ask for some sort of action to preempt those state laws.
Sorry. I was going to ask you a question and then I started choking. That's the first time on the show, but as you can see, it's just a very exciting topic. Sylvia, my question for you, if my voice will allow me to ask it, is has something like this been tried before by the White House or by any federal regulators?
Yeah, so this is a really interesting area because it has been tried before. People inside the White House were, in addition to people in the technology industry, lobbyists, were trying to get a provision included in Trump's big, beautiful bill back in July. They wanted a state AI moratorium added to that bill, but it was very unpopular and it was actually killed by the Senate in a vote of 99-1. The White House is also trying to see if they can revive that provision and include something similar in another piece of legislation. So it seems like they very much want to find a way to do this, but I don't know if it's got the popularity needed amongst Republicans as well as Democrats, of course.
Right, and I'm talk about these state regulations that the White House is trying to block. How many of these state regulations are there even? And specifically, I guess if you could talk about a few states that have implemented them. I'm just wondering how big of an issue this is at all.
Yeah, well, there are more than 1,000 bills that have been introduced at the state level, and several of them have passed. The executive order or the draft executive order that we saw takes particular aim at Colorado and California, where acts have recently been passed, and these address issues like the potential for algorithmic discrimination and transparency issues. So there is certainly a lot of activity at the state level. The people behind the executive order and Trump himself have advocated for a national standard as opposed to this patchwork that Aaron mentioned. Although it's not really clear to me, at least, when such a national standard would materialize, what that would look like. There is some instruction in the order for David Sachs and others to begin that process, but it's not clear when or if a national standard would come to pass.
Aaron, as you think about watching this issue moving forward, what kind of questions come to mind in terms of how you think tech companies will be affected by this? But also, is this going to encourage more lobbying from the tech companies to sort of push what they want, given that it seems like it's kind of working?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's going to be really interesting to see what sort of legal arguments the Justice Department tries to make to challenge these state laws. And, that could have huge implications for the tech companies that are building these AI products. The order that we saw a draft of essentially implies that the Justice Department might claim that these state laws violate the Constitution, possibly violate the First Amendment, which is interesting because it's a similar argument that companies like Character AI are making in various lawsuits that they're fighting, saying that AI models essentially have free speech rights, just like citizens do.
Hmm.
Which, if that ends up being the tack that the Justice Department takes, would have pretty huge implications for all of the developers of AI models, as well as all of us who might interact with AI models on a day-to-day basis. So I think we're definitely going to see tech companies continue to lobby to try to shape what those arguments look like, and that's something that I think we'll be closely watching going forward.
And last question for the two of you, and look, anyone can jump in if they want or if they have an idea of this, but I'm wondering how this would affect consumers of AI products and services, right? I mean, we seemingly use these applications without thinking about any of the kind of regulations that are put in place at a federal or a state level. Sylvia, anything come to mind, or Aaron, around how I could be affected from this as a user of a chatbot?
Well, I
I think
think
There we go. That's what I wanted. I wanted that excitement
You
on
go,
both
Aaron.
ends. Okay. Sylvia, I'm going to come to you first, and then we're going to Aaron.
Well, I think it's a matter of how these models and how the companies creating these models are regulated. And that, of course, has an effect on consumers because this is extremely powerful technology that more and more people are interacting with in more and more ways. And what Trump and the people behind this order are advocating for is a really kind of light touch approach. And the folks in favor of state regulation would argue that states can act quicker and address concerns that are cropping up now.
Right.
So I think, whether these companies are regulated and how they're regulated, of course, has consequences for us, the
Right.
users of chatbots.
Aaron, what do you think?
Yeah, I mean, so far, some of the state laws that we've seen in places like California or Colorado focus on basically forcing companies to disclose when you're interacting with an AI product. So I think that, might have implications if you've ever waited on, a phone call with customer support and you're not sure if you're talking to a human or to an AI agent. That might be the type of impact that you see from these regulations, whether or not they go into effect. So I think that that could be the type of thing that states are trying to target right now that some of these companies aren't too happy with. And that might be one of the impacts that you would see as a consumer.
Great. Well, Sylvia and Aaron, it's a great discussion. I want to thank you for coming on. We really do appreciate it. We'll see you soon.